Welcome to this week's episode in regards to Raymond Hollowell's Working with the Law. This particular chapter that I'm following today is actually the law of supply. If there's anybody out there following along, just feel free to say hello. And one of the problems with this particular system is that even though I'm broadcasting a lot of different places, if you say hello, it won't tell me who you are. So you could add your name to that, that'd be perfect. So the law of supply, and oh, by the way, Karen Gatrinik, who usually is here with me, is a little under the weather today, unfortunately. I'm sure she'll be back to normal very, very soon, and hopefully back joining us again next week, as we actually next week talking about the law of attraction. So law of supply. This is a great chapter. I think a lot of people don't really quite grasp. Hey, Jerry Cates, how are you? Don't really grasp exactly some of these laws. And I think probably the law of supply is one that maybe a lot of people overlook, but definitely worth understanding. So I'm going to go through it. If you are interested in a copy of Raymond Hollowell's book, I can certainly provide you with a download. Just reach out, say hello, and ask for it, and I'll send you a PDF download that you can have. Maybe you can use that to follow along with us as we go along. Again, if you're just joining me, Karen Gatrinik is unable to make it today due to some health issues. She is doing really quite well, and I'm pretty confident she'll be back with us next week. So anyways, I'm going to read a few of these things. I really did kind of like this chapter quite a bit. It makes you really think about a lot of different stuff. So anyways, he starts out with a quote from the Bible in Matthew 7:7, where he said, he's quoting, ask and it shall be given you, seek and ye shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. And just by, taking a really good look at that particular quote from the Bible, ask and it shall be given, right? Like, the reality is there is no shortage of anything. When it comes to understanding the law of supply, anything and everything you could ever imagine already exists. And these are things to understand. So let me read that one more time. Again, it's from Matthew 7:7. Ask and it shall be given you, seek and ye shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. So there's very little doubt, I think, in the fact that, whatever it is you want, you just have to be clear about it. You have to have a passion for it and have an expectation for it, and it's going to show up. So he carries on. This is the very beginning of the chapter. He says, man is never satisfied. This fact is deplored by many, but God did not intend that man should forever be satisfied. Now, right off the bat, that's something that I think that there's a lot of people today, a lot of people that I talk to that will probably, say that there's something wrong with that thinking, when the reality is it's not. We're here to grow. We're here to always be expanding in some way. So when he says man is never satisfied, this fact is deplored by many, but God did not intend that man should be forever satisfied. And that's really, really our essence, is we're always should be looking for what's next. But it goes on to say the law of his being is perpetual increase, progress, and growth. So when one good is realized, another desire for a greater good will develop. And when a higher state is reached, another and more glorious state will unfold his vision and urge him on and on. Hence, the advancing life is the true life, right? The life that God intended man to live. And you think about it, like, in actually other programs that I worked on, even, I've got a book called Abundance Tuning that, I talk about the idea of being stuck. And being stuck really is just, our yearning to grow. Like you're only stuck because you don't have a vision of what you want next. And you're going to find it because of that, it causes a lot of different problems in our life. It's going to cause, stress, anxiety, fear of the unknown. And it's got a lot more to do with the fact that our design is for us to grow. We're always supposed to be looking for what's next. And when you get through this particular chapter, you start to realize that, anything and everything you can imagine is already here. So anyways, he carries on and he says, the law of good is universal. For are we not all seeking good in some form or another? Science and logic alike declare that the universe is filled with is filled with the essential substance of every imaginable good that man can imagine, and that he is entitled to a full and ever-increasing supply of any and every good he may need or desire. Right? Let me think of that again. Ever-increasing supply of any and every good he may need or desire. Now, we believe, therefore, that it is right and good for man to seek to gratify all pure, again, pure desires and ambitions. Now, he goes on to say, here's the key to the law as Jesus gave it. What things soever ye desire may ye pray, believe that ye receive them and ye shall have them. And that's the key there. I underline believe, because that's the thing is, you can say you want something, but if you don't actually believe that you're going to achieve it or receive it in some way, in some form, it's not coming, right? This goes into the whole law of vibration and attraction. We often focus on, the attraction part, but we don't realize that we're not going to attract anything unless we're actually in vibration and harmony with it. And that's where the belief part goes. So very important to really understand that part of it as well. Now, it carries on and says, every person, consciously or unconsciously, is operating this law in one or more of its phases. It works universally and on every plane of life's expression. We are all daily drawing into our lives the things we most desire and expect. And whether we attract good things or bad things, that's the key part too, is, you may not realize or not, you may be desiring and expecting something that isn't good for you. And a lot of people do. So anyways, he says, and whether we attract good things or bad things, the principle operated is the same. But as we want more of the good things in life and less of the bad, it will be necessary to understand the law more perfectly, and so be able to adapt our thinking to it in a more direct fashion, right? So he's talking about here, we need to be focusing on the desire that we want, not the desires that we don't want. Thus, we secure the greater benefits that accrue from a conscious, intelligent use of its power. And again, that's the thing too, is, people often are focusing on lack, and they wonder why they have lack. And you shouldn't have lack in your life. It's your thinking is causing that. There is no shortage. There is no lack of supply of anything and everything in this universe. So, by he's saying again, being able to adapt our thinking to it is in a more direct fashion is what is needed. Thus, we secure the greater benefits that accrue from a conscious, intelligent use of its power. Okay, so he goes on again and says, we affirm repeatedly that God is our supply. Or now people refer to it as, source, right? And if we would think of a moment and trace our supply back to its source, we would agree that the statement is true. The difficulty with some is that they can be more easily look to creature for the source of their substance than to the creator. We don't really believe that God is the source of our substance. We try to think it is true, and we may theoretically accept it, yet there is an uncertainty. It is hard for some to believe in something they do not see. It is so much easier to believe in what we see. Now, if we can see plenty all about us, we are willing to believe it and enjoy it. But later, as we are able to believe in the abundance of good, we shall then see it and enjoy it. Thus, at the outset, the question is, which comes first, seeing or believing? Great question. I'm pretty confident that it's the believing part. Now, as we study the facts, we shall learn that the latter comes first, and the law is found on our belief, which in turn determines our sight. So it's believing that causes the seeing. It's, and unfortunately, you hear that all the time where people say, I'll believe when I see it. Well, chances are, depending on what it is you're looking for, you're never going to see it until you believe it's coming first. And that's where I think, studying this type of material is really going to help you enhance, the outcomes in your life. The reality again is, you need to know what it is you want. You need to have an expectation that's going to show up in your life. And the more you understand that there is no shortage of anything, and understand that anything and everything you can focus on, believe, and expect is going to show up. And it's actually a pretty exciting lesson, especially when you start to see it happen. He goes on to say, all the supply there ever was, still is, and ever shall be, for nothing can ever be wasted or lost. Right? There can never be a shortage in supply. Like there's no such thing as there's only so much to go around. Like the reality is there is no shortage, right? It goes on again. I'm skipping over a few of the things here, because some of it, again, I highly recommend you read the entire thing, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to kind of go through some of the highlights, things that I've already thought was something we should be having a chat with. So anyways, I highlight it here, but when they learn to see with their mind's eye, they will realize differently. And that's the key is, I always remember listening to Bob saying, if you can see it in your mind, you can hold it in your hand. And that's really the key. So let's go over to this next page here. Feel free if I say something and you want some clarification on it, feel free to just send a message to me. I'll be happy to do my best to answer that for you. In fact, it'd be helpful because usually I have somebody to bounce these things off of, and unfortunately, Karin's not here today. But anyhow, so let's see what else I got highlighted. He says, once our forefathers were in style when they rode the stage, a hack, or a carriage. It has not been so long since one was the talk of the town if he owned a fast team of horses and a rubber-tired Victoria or a gig. And again, this was written quite a long time ago. I think it was 1939, I believe. And don't quote me on that, but sometime in that time frame anyways. So, these are the people that were most revered, the ones that had a team of horses and rubber-tired, basically buggies or carriages, right? Now, he goes on to say, where are they now? Gone and almost forgotten. The automobile has supplanted them. Now, how did it all happen? When people demanded a means of traveling with more speed, greater comfort, and luxury, necessity gave man an idea. He thought of building a horseless carriage. He worked on the plan, slowly developed it, and slowly educated the public to accept the modern mode of transportation. One outstanding man dreamed of the world rolling on wheels and set out to build a car that the poor man could afford. Now, he goes on to say, today, the automobile has become such an important factor in man's life that we wonder how we could have ever progressed without it. You see, whenever man has needed a certain thing in life, an idea has been first given him in mind. He was inspired to develop the idea and then materialize it by converting a piece of mud or metal into a usable form. Right. So basically, again, even when you're talking about supply, it can even be ideas. It could be the how, correct? Now, why did people live so long content with the horse and carriage and not enjoy the automobile? Well, that's because they could not imagine it. Their minds were not trained to demand such a thing. Was the supply available to build such a machine? Yeah. There was as much supply at hand then as there is right now. Right? Thus, then he goes on to say, in fact, the supply has always been there since the very beginning. Yes. Thus, it was not God's fault that the auto was so late in coming to man's needs. This is important here. It was man's fault because he hadn't been so long realizing the need. Where there is no demand, there will be no evidence of supply. It's not that there's a shortage. It's, again, we're the creators. We're the ones that have to envision what it is we want. And then anything and everything we need will show up. Goes on to say, our parents who had a horse and a buggy consciousness could not attract a new mode of travel until they were able to enlarge their minds to conceive the necessity of the automobile. And then he says, the secret of the law lies in one's consciousness, right? A man's life consists not in the abundance of the things he possesses, but in the consciousness of that which he has. Man possesses the whole world and all its wealth, yet is only able to enjoy what is consciously permits him to discern. Now think about that. Like it's, anything and everything you could ever imagine already exists. And the only way that we're ever going to enjoy anything and everything that's possible is, first off, we have to be consciously aware of what it is that we want. That's usually where I find most people that I work with kind of come up short. They want to change, they want things to happen, but they have no idea what it is they want. So that's really the key, is you got to have that idea in your mind of what it is you want. Good example of what we're just talking about is the automobile. Because we could very well be still riding around in horse and buggies if it wasn't for somebody who decided they wanted something better. Right? So again, this is an excellent chapter. In fact, this entire book is really a very good book. There's 11 different laws in here. I know next week we're talking about the law of attraction. That might be something most people have heard of, but most of these laws, they're part of your day to day, and you probably never heard of a lot of these things. So again, I would highly recommend taking the time to read this. So, okay, where are we here? Okay, he goes on to say another portion of here. The thing we dare not to do is to fret and worry about supply or about where our next dollar is coming from. Think how many people do that. The rent's due on the 1st. I don't have the money for the rent. I don't know where it's going to come from. Things like that. When the reality is, again, is it going to change overnight? No, but when you start to really understand what we're talking about here, you start to realize that there is no shortage. Where the shortage is in your mind. You're not seeing it, and we can get into all kinds of things. That's probably had a lot to do with your conditioning and so on and so on. But he goes on to say here, fretting and worry tend to restrict and limit the supply at hand. They tend to close off the outflow of substance, whether that flow is small or large. Instead of lifting us out of limitation, instead of improving our conditions or increasing our supply, they drag us deeper into the throes of doubt and fear. Again, you go back to the idea of, I can't pay my bills this month. That's going to cause a tremendous amount of doubt and fear. But the true understanding of the laws of the universe is you'll realize that there is no shortage. It only appears to be a shortage because you haven't tuned into it. And again, that can be changed. In fact, I highly recommend, if this is something that you would like to work on, reach out. Go to my website at leemjenkins.com, and I'd be happy to have a conversation with you about all of this. So instead of expecting more to follow, we grow tense and anxious, which increases our fear and brings us less and less. Instead of tightening up in our thinking, we must relax and be more expanding. We must educate our minds to a larger state of thinking. When we can think and realize more abundance, we shall receive more abundantly. This does not mean that the engineer is destined to be rich while the farmer remains poor. There are poor engineers and rich farmers. It is not the vocation that determines riches, but the demands we make of our vocations that determine riches. As we are able to think and to realize more abundance out of what we already have, we shall not only expand our thinking, but receive more abundantly. This is the basic principle of the law, right? Again, this is not an easy thing to actually quite understand, because we get conditioned to believe, there are limits. We get all kinds of conditioning from our environment as we're growing up that make us believe that we're not allowed to have so much, that even asking for it is something wrong with us. But the reality is I've already mentioned that we're here to grow and we're here to expand. And if you're not growing and expanding, then you're never going to really truly be happy, because that's our nature. And the idea that there isn't enough to go around is completely false. You see it all on the news all the time. They're always talking about what's lacking and what's missing. And it goes back into what he's talking about, where it drags us deeper into the throes of doubt and fear. And you'll hear me all the time say, don't watch the news, because that's kind of all they're doing. The sad part here is, if everybody in the world understood these laws, we could fix everything. Well, and I think that's what we're hoping to accomplish with the Elevate Network. We're building things there, and I'm hoping that someday we're going to be all around the world, and we're going to be able to spread this kind of information to everyone. And it'd be amazing what we might be able to accomplish, because again, there's no lack of supply, right? There's no reason that someone has less than someone else. We can have anything and everything we could ever imagine, but you got to understand it, and you have to learn how to tune into it. Actually, it takes me right to the very next part here. It says, all the poverty in the world arises from a poverty consciousness, whether it be collective or individual. Now, why do millions suffer lack and millions more die yearly in India from starvation? Now, I'm told that many of them had never in a whole lifetime enjoyed a full meal. Doesn't make sense, does it? There's no shortage. Surely it's not because nature has underestimated the need for so great a people. Surely it's not because there's not enough food to go around. It is because the vision of the people has been limited to such poverty. If you grow up in that environment, there's a good chance you have no idea of anything different. And then the sad part is here, I live in Canada, and I know a lot of people that are following are in Europe and United States, and we live in very rich countries, and you can see it all the time. People throw food away. I was just at the grocery store, and I know people that run grocery stores, and it's amazing how much of the food gets thrown out. Because it gets a day old or 2 days old, and it's no longer something that you can sell. And yet we've got people in the world that could use food. It doesn't make sense, does it? He goes on to say here, ask the farmer about his crops. He will tell you his problem is not scarcity, but oversupply. Actually, I just thought of somebody that also does farming and has a whole whack of extra, I guess they're, I don't know what they are, yellow peppers type of thing. They were yellow anyways. You don't want to ask me about this kind of stuff. But boxes and boxes of it were dropped off at a food bank. Like, again, that's what he's saying right here, that ask the farmer about his crops and he'll tell you that his problem is not scarcity, but oversupply. Ask the miner, no matter whether he mines for gold, silver, diamond, coal, or iron, he would tell you that the supply is far greater than the demand. Ask the scientist, and he would tell you there is food at plenty. There's more food in the air yet undiscovered than we can use. There's more power in a single drop of water or in a lump of sugar than man can realize at this moment. The supply is greater than the demand, and the demand is determined by his own thinking. And that's what I'm getting at is if there's a shortage in your life of anything, it has to do with your thinking. And this is kind of, again, this is my area that I work is really about understanding how our mind works, especially our subconscious, the conditioning paradigms. If you do believe in lack, it's because, well, not your fault, but it's something you were probably conditioned to believe. And it can be changed, but you have to take responsibility for the fact that you are thinking that way. So let's read that part again. The supply is greater than the demand, and the demand is determined by man's own thinking. The proposition with most of us is that our power of attraction is too weak to meet the demands. Our mind is like a magnet which draws unto itself its own like, type, and kind. A magnet can draw to itself in proportion to its power of magnetism that is generated or collected within itself. Our mental magnet is greatly reduced in strength by our worries and our fears, and our inflow of good is slowly closed off. If our mental force becomes too weakened, we may even repel what little good that is trying to reach us. You see it all the time. Like, it's, again, I've talked to many, many people around the world, and I can tell you, this happens all the time. It even happens to people that, really actually understand this material, but still have a bit of a difficulty making it come true in their lives. So, like I said already, if you're interested in talking about this further, just go to my website. You can actually sign up for one of my breakthrough sessions, and I would love to talk to you about it. Okay, where did I leave off here? If our mental force becomes too weak, and we may even repel what little good that is trying to reach us. I just said that. As we charge a magnet with electric energy to build up its power of magnetism, so can our mind be charged with a mental energy that builds up a power of attraction. Again, you can draw into your world whatever it is that you want, but you got to know how and understand that, you probably have some limiting beliefs that are causing you not to allow these things into your life. He goes on to say, like nature, we must follow a natural law. Nature never builds downhill, always up. To receive prosperity, we, like nature, cannot perform magic or miracles. We cannot make health or happiness or dollars out of nothing. Nature shows us how we can convert much or little of the available substance into a usable material. The available substance is our thought. We say it again, the available substance is our thought. And we charge our minds with constructive thoughts. Like nature, to accomplish good, our thoughts must always be building upward, must be constructive. If, for example, a drone bee in a hive has decided to lay down on its brothers and only do half a job, does Mother Nature agree and find a part-time work for this special bee? No, she does not. She impresses the other bees who are working hard to collect the honey and fill the hive, to send their soldiers after the drone. It is politely marched outside and stung to death. Now, I'm not suggesting we do that, but to people, but sometimes you might think maybe you should. But that's what they do. You have a lazy bee, then the drones are actually going to kill it, right? And that's what happens. Nature destroys a lazy bee. And, we're not talking about destroying anybody, but I think that you're going to find that you can, with your thinking, destroy your own life or keep yourself from living the life that you could be living. So now he says here, if thoughts enter our minds that are not full strength, are not wholly positive like nature, we must comply with the law and destroy them. So what he's saying is kill the negative thoughts, right? We dare not entertain a half-truth or a lazy thought without weakening our power of attraction and reception. I bet probably people listening right now that can probably relate to that. You definitely probably know people that you can point to and say, yeah, that's exactly what's going on. Right here is an excellent place for us to begin with an inventory. We lost, that doesn't make sense. We should, I guess, typing's all wrong here, but anyways, he's talking about take our thoughts carefully to separate the strong thoughts from the drone thoughts. The drones must be cast out and destroyed by refusal to accept them any longer. Then we must carefully guard every thought so that another weak one cannot unconsciously or consciously slip through to play destruction with others that are trying to do good. Now, this is something, we talk about all the time about doing like affirmations, meditation, things like that. Those are all designed to basically destroy those drone thoughts, the idea of the lazy thoughts. Every time a negative thought comes in your mind, you can consciously make a difference and change it to something more positive. And it's that positive thought is the magnet. And you're going to attract to you whatever your thoughts are. So this is very important to really understand that you can, in fact, destroy those negative thoughts and replace them with something positive. But it takes practice. Because those old thoughts have probably been there with you since the day you started thinking for yourself, right? Okay, I'm going to skip forward a little bit here. Okay, this part here I highlighted. Okay, he says here, as abundance and supply are one, then to use the law, you must think supply, talk supply, and live supply with every thought. Keep your thoughts so occupied with ideas of plenty that any and all the drone thoughts of lack or loss will be destroyed. It's amazing, these books, like this is, like 90 years old, this book. And it's brilliant. It's like, we're on Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern. We do, we're actually on just the last 2 chapters now of Think and Grow Rich. Brilliant book. And again, 1937. And you can go back even farther. Like there's books that are even farther back. In fact, I had this conversation with somebody the other day that, you can go into the Bible and pretty much everything we're talking about right now is in there. It's religions that have a tendency to have us maybe see those words a little differently, but the reality is truth is truth. And that's something I kind of grasped quite a while back was you'll know the truth when you hear it. And, you've been saying truth will set you free, right? It does. So I'm just going to read this part again. As abundance and supply are one, then to use the law, you must think supply, talk supply, and live supply with every thought. Keep your thoughts so occupied with ideas of plenty that any and all the drone thoughts, negative thoughts, of lack or loss will be destroyed. Right? Okay, so he goes on to say here again, remember not to confuse money with supply. Money is but one of the numerous means of supply. Money is not the root of evil, but the love of money is. I just had that conversation with somebody today. Again, that's something too that, we get conditioned sometimes by our environment that somehow wanting financial prosperity is something wrong. It's not. Money is actually used for a lot of wonderful things. It builds schools, it builds hospitals, it builds orphanages, it can pretty much build anything you want. It's the love of money that's the problem, right? So if you concentrate upon money alone and use every means to gather it and hoard it, you are forcing the law to close out other good. If you concentrate on a part and not the whole, you get only a small part. If you concentrate on the whole, you enjoy all its parts. If you love money, use the law solely to amass riches, you may gain the riches, but you will also lose so much more that is good that your life will be quite empty and lonely. Well, that's usually the fact. You see people that's all they focus on is more money, more money, more money. But you're going to find they don't have very good relationships. Maybe they got a couple of kids and the kids hate them or things like that. Like a could be a spouse. The chances are, because there's nothing given to the other good in your life, it's only focusing on money, then you're going to, again, miss out on a lot of things. So here he says, if we love the law, use the law to gain supply and use it wisely. We will satisfy every desire. We will learn how to live wholesomely, freely, and wisely, and there will be no losses. Our lives will be as complete as God, the law, designed them to be. And he goes on to say here, there may be many of you who are trying to follow the truth ideas and who have earnestly affirmed and thought statements for supply, but somehow it has only come in small amounts or not at all. That happens a lot, right? Now, this may be largely due to the fact that your senses are not yet too strong and your mind to control. Too strong for your mind to control. Again, a lot of this takes practice. That's something you got to understand. First is the knowledge, and then is applying that knowledge, right? You must see first before you can believe. That is, you are so used to seeing just so much supply or money that is, in spite of your statements, you believe more in what you see than in what you are trying to think. Again, that's a lot of it has to do with how we've been conditioned to see how our reality is based on how things were conditioned into us. To you, it is necessary first to train your senses to come under the control of the thoughts, which you must think to conform with the law. He's got a bunch of stories in here. I'm just going to kind of skip over some of this because it's, again, I do highly recommend you read the entire thing. I just don't think it's necessary at this point to read it. But anyways, let's see where okay. He goes on to say, it follows therefore that you can steadily draw into your life any and every form of good you may truly desire, as it is the will of God that you should enjoy every good that will promote happiness and progress. All desire is an expression of the will, while to expect good is to demand good, so that both are necessary to attract supply. Therefore, seek to adjust your desire with God's plan, the law, and expect that every good and only good can reach you, that nothing but good can come. Now, it's interesting too, he's talking about God's plan, the law. That was something too that, and we hear about sin. And basically sin is not living by the laws, right? It's not about a certain behavior. It's about not understanding these laws and not living by them. And the punishment is you're going against the law. Like even in this case, the law of supply is if you're not fully aware of this particular law, technically you're committing a sin. And then the punishment for that sin is that you're not going to have access to the supply. So if you're living in a situation where money is, an obstacle, maybe good way to say it, you're technically living in sin because there is no shortage. And the punishment for that sin is that you're going to constantly be worrying about money. But understanding the law and living by the law, you start to realize that there is no shortage. What's wrong is your thinking. You're not tuning in to attracting that money into your life. Again, it goes back to the whole idea of the law of vibration and attraction. So anyways, what's he say here? An abundance of all needed good is the natural heritage of every man, woman, and child. Let's read that again. An abundance of all needed good is the natural heritage of every man, woman, or child. It means that it's already yours. If you don't have it in your life, again, you're not following the law. And he says, that is a vital truth. It is wrong for one to dwell in poverty when there is plenty for all. It is wrong for one member of the human family to accumulate vast wealth at the expense of his fellow man. Wrong for one to dwell in conditions of war and chaos when peace may prevail. Wrong for the strong to take advantage of the weak. Wrong to lack in good of any kind that may be essential to promote the welfare and happiness of the individual. So whatever falls short of giving satisfaction, harmony, growth, and increase is abnormal. Nature originally intended that the real needs of man should be adequately supplied, not his surface wants, which are often impulses, but the normal specific needs of the individual, which would be abundantly satisfied, were man to live in closer harmony with fundamental law of supply. Again, it's our birthright to live in prosperity. No one in this world should be suffering at all. There is no shortage. I believe that the only reason that certain parts of the world, see shortages is because you've got greedy leaders that don't understand the laws of the universe and they just want it for themselves. Like, why else would you allow people in your country to starve? Like, why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense, right? But it's happening. He goes on to say, nature is the prolific producer of blessings, which she gives freely to mankind, ever producing all things for a good and useful purpose. Every individual, therefore, has a natural right to a full supply. Okay, let me get it. Every individual, therefore, has a natural right to a full supply of every good that he can use or enjoy. Owing, however, to the artificial means man has been taught to use and to depend upon for his supply, he has lost sight of the basic truth upon which this lesson is based. At the outset, let us realize that the material world in which we live is a sphere of effects, and that behind these effects is a world of causes. Then recognize that when you desire any particular effect, it is, because that specific good is already in existence in the sphere of causes. Then recognize that when you desire any particular effect, this desire is an appearance of an underlying cause, right? So cause and effect. I talk about it in Abundance Tuning, my book, Abundance Tuning, the very first chapter on reality. Your reality is caused by you. A lot of times we want to blame somebody or blame something outside of ourselves, but the reality is it's coming from you. It has nothing to do with you are at fault or at blame. It's just that you've been conditioned to see things a certain way. So if you want to change your reality, you have to take advantage or take control of it and take responsibility for it, and start to go backwards and start to think of what's causing it, right? So there's always some type of underlying cause. It goes on to say, this is the principle upon which our definition of the law of supply is based. And when you learn how to operate it in the proper manner, you will be able to draw into your life more and more of the good in whatever form you may need or desire. Everywhere in the world is an omnipotent principle of good. Omnipotent principle of good. We touch it in countless ways. Each thought of good is a seed for the production of good. You are entitled to all the good you can appropriate and use. And the more good you realize and enjoy, the more you live in a true accord with the purposes of this ever-present spirit of goodness. Learn to understand how to tap the source of all supply, for there is no limit to the good that may be developed and enjoyed in your life. In truth, man embodies every law of nature relating to its highest welfare and orderly growth. He is not, therefore, separated from any good thing he may need to enhance his happiness or further his progress. But whether he shall lack or possess that which he needs or requires will be largely determined by the use he makes of his present endowment of intelligence and power. Again, this has everything to do with your thinking, doesn't it? The more man grows in true knowledge, and the more he uses his power in constructive ways, the more good he will create in the circle of his expression in his own little world. And this goes back to what I was saying about is we cause our reality. If you are not interested in taking responsibility for the reality in your life, it's not going to change. If you want new relationships, you want more money, you want even better health, you got to realize that you are in some way causing whatever reality you have. And again, I don't want anybody to think that I'm talking about blame. It's not about blame. It's about understanding. We all come into this world and we're brought into environments that, basically teach us how to see the world. Now, generally that's taught to us by people who love us very much. But the thing you have to realize is they can only give you what they have. They can't give you what they don't have. And that's usually what happens. If you grow up in an environment where money is always tight, well, you're always, no matter how much you want something different, you're always going to see things that way. But you can change it. And it changes by, first off, recognizing that you are the cause. It's your thinking. So he's saying that in here is that you have to change how you see the world. You become a magnet to the great supply that's out there. Now, there's I guess it's a poem or something. I guess it's, anyways, at the very end of this particular chapter. I know I'm kind of running short here, but that's what happens when you're only one of you and there's not two to bounce stuff off of. But anyways, this is called The Promised Land, and it's by Alva Romanus. I think that's how you say it. But anyways, I'm just going to read it to you. It says, "No more shall I look to the far skies for my Father's loving aid, since here upon earth his treasures lie, and here is his kingdom laid. No more through the midst of things unknown I'll search for the promised land, for time is the footstool of his throne, and I am within his hand. The wealth that is more than finest gold is here, if I shall but ask, and wisdom unguessed and power untold are here for every task. The gates of heaven are before my eyes, their key is within my hand. No more shall I look to the far skies, for here is the promised land." Very good. Now, again, it's really important to understand that there is no shortage of anything. The shortage is in our mind. It's in our subconscious mind. It's how we're conditioned to see the world. Now, if you're not living the life that you want to, it's only your thinking that's stopping you from having it. There is no shortage of anything. Anything and everything you could ever imagine already exists. I had this conversation a little while back recently too. If you think like just in the last 100 years, what we've accomplished, we've done more in the last 100 years than we've done in our entire existence. Like, think about that. We're talking on these little phones and, Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and all these kind of things. And we're talking to people all around the world instantly. I'm broadcasting right now on Facebook and I think LinkedIn and I don't know where else, but a few different places. How is that possible? If you were to go back when this book was written, they would think you're crazy if you told them you were going to be doing that kind of thing. And again, in this book, he's talking about going from that horseless or the horse-driven carriage to driving a car. Well, look at the cars we have now. Now we're even talking about basically getting rid of gas-powered cars and making them all electric. Okay, right? But again, 100 years ago, they had electric cars, but you couldn't get very far because the battery wouldn't last. That's why we have gas-powered vehicles, is because the batteries in the electric cars didn't work. But now they do. So it took somebody like Elon Musk to want to perfect it. That's all it was. The how was always here, right? And that's the thing that's really, I think, important to understand is anything and everything, again, is already here. You just have to use your imagination. And that's where, your thinking is important. Like if you're constantly focusing on problems, you're never looking for solutions. It's not going to happen. You're never going to, build that beautiful picture in your mind and allow the how to come to you. You're not going to create something because you're too busy focusing on a problem. So as we go forward, again, next week we're on the law of attraction. I think a lot of people know that, but I think even that, a lot of people don't really truly understand the law of attraction. Because a lot of times, like, the attraction can be more of just a simple desire. Whereas it's not going to actually come to you until you have a faith and an expectation. You have to intend to have it show up in your life. And if you don't do that, then it's not coming. I remember when The Secret came out, everybody started making vision boards, and that's a great idea. I highly recommend it, but most people gave up on it because they never really truly believed it was coming. That's why I think it's so important to study this type of material, and you start to realize that anything and everything, it's already here. I can't say that more enough. I think it's important to understand it's already here. You just have to tune into it, and you're going to tune into it by understanding these laws. So anyways, I'm going to probably call it a little bit short because I don't have someone to bounce these ideas off of today. But I hope you found something good in all of this. And again, if you would like to have a copy of this, just reach out to me and I'll be happy to give you a downloaded version of it. And if you want to discuss it further, just go to my website, liamjenkins.com. There's a link there where you can actually sign up for a free conversation. There's no obligation, nothing to buy. And if you know me, you know that I'm not anybody that's going to try and sell you something you don't want. So I think you'll find that conversation will be very, very valuable to you. They usually turn out quite well. So I encourage you to do that again, liamjenkins.com. And I'm going to let you go at this point. Next week, again, I've already mentioned it. It's the law of attraction, and hopefully Karen will be back. And she's always had some wonderful things to say. So thanks for joining me, and thanks Jerry Cates for being here, and whoever else has also been with us throughout this. We'll see you again next week. Take care.